So I wanted to welcome everyone here tonight. My name is Jessica Brackett. I am president of the board of Progress Muscatine. I also wanted to thank our elected officials who are on the Zoom tonight. We have City Councilor, John Gendrick. We have a supervisor, Danny Chick, who's getting on right now. And Karen Cooney is expected to hop on here if she isn't already from the school board. So thanks again for joining us tonight. Progress Muscatine is a 501c3 nonprofit. We have been around for a little over 5 years, but we really just started working on specific issues in the past couple years. And our goal is to empower Muscatine County residents to identify problems and work towards sustainable solutions for the common good. Currently, we have a 4-person board, and we have Michael Salino Hug, Linda Smargy, and Christine Mode, who are currently on the board. So why are we here tonight? Well, we want to talk about energy, and there are a number of reasons that we want to talk about energy. And we're going to discuss a few of those and then ask you folks why you have come here tonight. First, we are concerned about weather and climate disasters. And second, non-attainment is a big concern of ours. Portions of Muscatine County have been in non-attainment for a decade, and we're going to go into some details about why we want to get out of non-attainment and why we want to stay out of non-attainment. Other reasons why we are here, we want Muscatine to be energy independent and have a localized microgrid that is resilient. In addition, we want the energy and financial savings of energy efficiency to be a part of the conversation here in Muscatine. So, looking at the weather and climate disasters, what we found was between 2016 and 2022, there were over 120 weather and climate disasters in the United States. And that equaled over 5,000 deaths and at a cost to taxpayers of over $1 trillion. Now, I know a couple people on the call said they really aren't concerned with climate change, but I think something that can bring us all together is the fact that this is a $1 trillion bill over 6 years, and that should be something that we think everybody should be concerned with. So next we have non-attainment. Non-attainment means not attaining the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. These are science-based health standards, and they identify 6 criteria pollutants. These are the most harmful pollutants that they have identified. And these criteria pollutants do 3 things. They injure public health. That could be health to human beings and animals. They harm the environment, and they cause property damage. Specifically, Muscatine is the only place in Iowa that is in non-attainment for any criteria pollutant today. Today, Muscatine is classified in non-attainment for sulfur dioxide. And as you can see from those dates, this isn't the first time. So we know that basically this is a conscious decision by industry to burn enough coal to put Muscatine in non-attainment. And this happened in the 90s, and then this happened again starting in 2013 until today. So why is this an issue? Well, for economic development, it's a big issue because what it does, it hinders economic development by adding additional burdens to industry through additional air modeling and regulation, and then oversight for business expansion and new development. So Progress Muscatine wants to see Muscatine become energy independent. What do we mean when we say this? There are many definitions of what this means, but when Progress Muscatine says this, we mean we want Muscatine to be independent from external fuel sources and costs. Currently, MP&W plans to become dependent on natural gas from Texas. Now, over the past couple of years, we've been attending board meetings, and on one hand, they have been talking about the volatility of natural gas prices and the unstable systems in Texas, And on the other hand, they're planning on hooking Muscatine's energy system into Texas, into the Permian Basin. Financial savings. This is something we want to talk about tonight. We know that energy savings is measurable and predictable, and we can find financial savings for individuals, nonprofits, commercial businesses, and industrial businesses. So we just want to open the floor up here. Why don't you, is there anyone who can tell us why you're here tonight? I mean, this is this is your evening and you have chose to spend it with us. Are there particular reasons why? Are there things that you are specifically wondering?
Yeah, this is Steve Paulsrud, and I guess I'm here. I guess I'm here just to get some more information, which you have provided, and would like to have MPW be more, have more renewable sources of energy in their portfolio. Also with city and county officials being able to maybe do more with solar or with their fleet of vehicles going more electric. So I'm here to do whatever I can to help with those efforts.
Great, thanks, Stephen. John.
Yeah, hi, I'm here. I'm the director of the Water Resource Recovery Facility, or the wastewater plant for the city of Muscatine. We're pursuing our own renewable energy projects. We're looking at possibly investing in the Muscatine Solar One project as well. So I just wanted some more information and hopefully emphasize that the city is exploring being involved in more renewable energy projects.
Great, thanks, John. Anybody else want to tell us why they're here tonight?
Yeah, I'll speak. This is Sue Johansson, and I'm here tonight because I'm in the process of working with others in the community to organize an Muscatine County Energy District. We are interested in efficiency and helping the public learn about efficiency, energy efficiency. We're also interested in increasing the amount of solar that's in Muscatine County. And we're very anxious to help people learn more about the Inflation Reduction Act and the monies that are available to them, either through that or through the High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Act. There are thousands of dollars per household that are available. And I'm also interested in knowing more about your organization and how we might be able to collaborate.
Great, thanks, Sue. And thanks for your work on that. You're leading the way here. Yeah, Terry.
Terry Dvorak, I'm here, Redline Renewables. I've been helping a variety of communities in integrating solar and clean energy and EVs and that, and wanted to find out what's going on and if we can help make some of those goals happen in a fiscally responsible manner. We're happy to.
Great, thanks for joining us tonight, Terry. Really appreciate it. Anybody else like to share? Okay, let's move on. We're going to do a quick overview of coal here before we get into the renewable portion of this presentation. So here is an outline of coal use in the United States. As you can see, in about 2007, the United States hit its peak. And what you're looking at here is the yellow is the electric power. Taking us to 2021, that has decreased by about 50% in the United States. So coal is a stranded asset. At some point, what this means is at some point prior to the end of their economic life, a coal plant is no longer able to earn an economic return. And as a result of changes associated with the transition to the low carbon economy. And this comes from the Rocky Mountain Institute, which is a national leader in industrial energy transition. And they describe two ways that a coal plant becomes stranded. One is through regulatory stranding. This means that laws and regulations will impede the coal asset from being utilized to its full potential. And the second category here is economic standing. And this means when operating economics are such that it's no longer worth it for a plant owner to continue operations. Generally speaking, the coal industry is moving away from using coal. But fortunately, this is a little different in Muscatine. Muscatine has actually, they have overbuilt their coal capacity more than they've needed. And this has allowed them to burn extra coal and sell it, which actually has helped them recently, in particular because MISO, basically the regional energy folks, have needed extra capacity, and Muscatine Power and Water has provided that to MISO and has been a great help. And it's been a help and it has provided income to Muscatine Power and Water as well. But generally speaking, coal plants are becoming stranded assets. So coal and Muscatine. We did talk earlier about non-attainment, and that is definitely a result of burning coal. That CO2 comes directly from burning coal. But the other issue we have here in Muscatine is a leaking coal ash dump. And what we found is the pollutants that are exceeding safe levels here, they're listed there and in the quantity that they have exceeded the safety level. Now, our issue here is that Muscatine Power and Water has an unlined and uncovered coal pile on the bank of the Mississippi. And we know that their industrial neighbor, GPC, also had an unlined and uncovered coal pile, and through legal action was required to remove their coal pile from the bank of the Mississippi River and install natural gas. So in addition to this, we know that MP&W plans to continue burning coal throughout the decade. And so this will be a continual issue. So how's the legacy of coal ash being handled? So there was a rule that came out in 2015, the coal ash rule, that basically gave power producers 6 months to retrofit unlined ash ponds that exceeded certain pollution limits. This enforcement was largely ignored until just a couple weeks ago, when the EPA issued 6 proposed determinations to deny facilities requests to continue disposing of coal combustion residuals into unlined surface impoundments. Now, I don't know if anybody from MP&W would like to hop on here. Our question is, does MP&W think that this new enforcement is going to affect anything they're doing with their coal, their coal dump? Gage or Doug, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, Jessica, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I can jump in here. And as you know, the CCR landfill or coal combustion residual landfill is nowhere, it's not near the Mississippi River. And we are in full compliance with any and all regulations associated with the CCR landfill. We've got a long history of proactive compliance. We monitor outfalls and groundwater conditions. And so just want to make that clear, that has nothing to do with anything near the river and no impact whatsoever on Muscatine's drinking water supply. So I want to state that too. But this was just a ruling on, I believe, some other facilities that had requested continuing to operate some landfills. This doesn't impact us directly. The existing CCR regulations that are in place that we're in compliance with have not changed because of this for our facility.
Okay, thanks, Gage. I just want to clarify, I was talking about the coal piles and not the coal ash dump. So the coal ash dump, yes, is not next to the Mississippi River. So just to clarify. So we took a look at how another community-owned utility like Muscatine Power and Water is dealing with their coal ash dump. Basically, we looked at Ames, and they shut down their coal and converted to natural gas. But what they also did was line their coal ash dump, and they plan to add a second liner at a cost of $2 million. So we think this is a reasonable request of MP&W to help the leaking coal plant.
Hey, Jessica, you might
Yeah.
not know that Ames is going through a 50 megawatt solar RFP evaluation right now.
Oh, great. Thanks, Terry. So, do we have any thoughts on how Muscatine should handle the impacts of their coal and coal ash? From our perspective, we would like them to achieve the best standards possible, which is having a synthetic liner.
I got a question. Is there a plan? I don't know, but is there a plan to get completely off of coal in Muscatine?
That's the long-term plan, yes.
And how long, what's long term?
In the next decade.
Okay.
The board, we'll get into this a little bit later, but the board actually voted to close down some of the, and then they voted again to keep using them as peaking units. Any other thoughts about coal ash? Okay, we'll move along here.
It would be helpful if you were allowing the share screen for people to post comments.
Oh, let's see. We usually have this. Anybody suggest how I do that? Let's see.
If people just want to write them in the chat, we could keep checking the chat to keep the conversation going that way, maybe.
Christine, can you check the chat?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
great.
keep an eye on it.
Okay, thank you. Let me know we have questions here. So next we're going to look at NP&W and an overview of what they're doing right now. So actually these numbers at the top are from 2020, so they are a bit outdated. But basically one unit 9, that's running at 67% of the electricity needed here in Muscatine. Unit 8 and 8A was primarily used for steam for their industrial customer, GPC. And then we had unit 7 at 4.1%. And in 2020, MP&W's South Fork Wind Farm produced 8.8% of the electricity. But these numbers have adjusted a little bit. Actually, just at the last board meeting, they are not producing steam for MP&W anymore. So that 8 and 8A will not be producing steam. And in addition, over their current numbers in terms of the South Fork Wind Farm and how much energy they use from there, currently it's sitting at about 5.5%. So what has the board done? In August 2021, the board voted to retire units 7, 8, and 8A. This really, from their perspective, this signaled the beginning of a phase transition away from coal-fired power generation, and the units were anticipated to retire in May 31st of 2023. Then in May 2022, the board voted to defer the retirement and use units 7, 8, and 8A. They further clarified this in August of 2020 by clarifying that they will be running as peak units and limiting each unit to 16.7% of their potential capacity. In November of 2022, MPW entered into a power purchase agreement for Muscatine Solar 1. And next month, we're actually expecting MPW to, or for a power supply study, which is basically suggesting to MPW the transitions or the next steps that they take in their energy transition. And in the future, what we're expecting is MPW to build a chip natural gas plant. So what's missing from MPW's conversation about this? They have identified that their CO2 emission goals, but there's something missing. And the problem is that they are only really dealing with one part of the life cycle. When they say, or when anybody says natural gas is clean, what they really mean is it burns the cleanest. Now, what that doesn't take into consideration is the rest of the life cycle. And in particular, the extraction, the fracking, and the methane release during fracking. And also during processing and transport, there's also methane leakage. And what is most important here is that methane has 25 times more warming power than CO2. So while we are happy that MPW is measuring CO2, we believe they aren't measuring the most harmful pollutant that's going to come out of their energy choice. So as you probably know, natural gas has been used as fuel for generations. But really, there's a very short history of natural gas being used as it is today. So in the 80s and 90s, Mitchell Energy and Development Corporation spent years figuring out how to use hydraulic fracturing to produce commercial volumes of shale gas. And it wasn't until about 2000 that this process was actually a viable option for commercial volumes. So basically, the year 2000 was when natural gas really hit the scene, and on a big way. And so basically, we have just come to a time where enough time has passed that we have learned about the harms of hydraulic fracturing, and that studies, like longitudinal studies, have been done about the harms of fracking. So although natural gas is produced in 34 states, there's only about 5 states that produce 70% of natural gas. And they're listed there. Texas is, of course, the biggest, and that is where Muscatine Power and Water will be getting their natural gas from in the Permian Basin. So what we want to point out here is that a small number of states are going to be in harm's way as natural gas fracking is executed in their states. And we have seen some action taken, particularly in the Northeast about this. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the Delaware River Basin Commission. This commission was created by President Kennedy in '61 with collaboration from governors in Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, and with a federal representative from the Army Corps of Engineers. This commission was created to have a unified approach to managing the river systems and without regard to political boundaries. So what they did was create the Delaware River Basin Compact, which created federal law and law in each state. And what's key here is the Delaware River Basin Commission is responsible for the drinking water of over 13 million people. So in February 2021, the Delaware River Basin Commission, which includes the federal government and in an equal partnership, those 4 state governors, banned fracking in the Delaware River Basin. And we have the studies that they used to come to that conclusion here, linked here. But in short, the conclusion was fracking harms groundwater, surface water, and drinking water. And since they're responsible for the drinking water of 13 million people, they banned fracking. Now, our question is, if the federal government and these state governors have banned fracking, why is it banned in the Northeast but allowed in Texas and in other places? We think that, and we hope that this research is going to catch up around the country, and folks are going to, without losing their water supply, learn about the harms of fracking. So what we think is also missing from MPW's conversation is life in the Permian Basin. Now, while natural gas burns clean in Muscatine, and it will, there is devastation happening in the Permian Basin. And between 2019 and 2021, there were over 1,000 super emitters identified in the Permian Basin. This means that methane was constantly released at high levels, nonstop. In addition, the Permian emissions are over twice as high as any other oil and gas basin, according to satellite measurements. And these measurements were done, it was a collaborative effort between NASA, the Rocky Mountain Institute, and the University of Arizona. Continuation of life in the Permian Basin. What the Permian Basin has seen recently are an extreme amount of earthquakes. They didn't really have earthquakes before 2015, and since then the numbers have skyrocketed. 2019, we had 181, and the first 3 months of 2022, there were 59. And most recently, while all of these were over 3.0 on the Richter scale, at the end of last year, they had an a much larger earthquake, much larger than the previous ones, and it was a 5-point-something. So what we're seeing are increased earthquakes and increased in severity earthquakes. And this is because of wastewater being shot into the ground from fracking, and it basically it hits the fault lines and creates earthquakes. So this has been, let's see, 7 years of fracking in Texas here, or 7 years of these earthquakes, and that is the increase that we've seen. So what do we think that that's going to look like a decade from now, when Muscatine becomes dependent on the natural gas from the Permian Basin? Some things that we think are also missing from the conversation have to do with fracking with Forever Chemicals. Physicians for Social Responsibility is an international nonprofit, and they're basically on the front lines of every public health issue. And they did a study, a longitudinal study, and it was the first of its kind to connect PFAS to natural gas production. PFAS are known as forever chemicals because they do not break down in the environment, and they accumulate in your body, causing all kinds of severe health issues on most of the systems in your body, and in particular, male reproductive toxicity and tumors. This research also showed that in 1,200 emitting wells, there were 1,200 emitting wells in 6 US states, and they're listed there. Next, we want to look at the numbers. This is what MPW has put out about the cost of energy transition. And the top row of bills is your residential customers. The middle row is small business, and the bottom row is small industry. And in the first column, you're going to see the current bill numbers. In the second column, you're going to see what MPW calls their balanced plan. And then in the final column, it shows the expected cost of a 100% renewable plan. And what you're going to see here is that from these numbers, it makes the 100% renewable plan just out of reach financially. But we adjusted those numbers. Recently, just a few months ago, Doug White of MPW gave a presentation about how to reduce the cost of solar and battery storage by 50%. And so we reworked these numbers. And what we find is MPW's current plan for an individual is about $120. And with 100% renewable plus the IRA half off, that bill just goes to 125. The numbers look even better for small business and small industry. In fact, the bills are lower for both small business and small energy. They're lower by just a few dollars for the small business and by about $1,200 for the small industry. Next, we have Katie Rock from the Sierra Club. Katie?
Yes, hi.
Katie?
Sorry there. Yes, hello, I'm Katie Rock with the Sierra Club. I'm calling in from Des Moines, Iowa. I work for the Bianco campaign. So to add to what Jessica's saying, I just wanted to flag that we did an analysis in 2020, December 2020, looking at, comparing the cost of what MPW was considering at the time, which was 160 megawatt combined cycle gas plant, or actually no, we came up with the 160 megawatt size based on the size of the unit 9 coal plant, or piece of the coal plant, the piece that's actually set to retire in 2028. And at that time in 2020, we used a methodology that's used by the Rocky Mountain Institute, and we found that a clean energy portfolio would be cheaper by 40 million roughly in one scenario that's just solar, wind, and batteries. And when you combine it with demand response and energy efficiency programs, you could save nearly $100 million off the cost of a one-to-one replacement from coal to gas. And now, 2 years later, 3 years later, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, those prices are even lower, as Doug covered in a recent meeting. So we kind of ran the numbers based on the 90 megawatt plant that NPW has proposed. And using RMI's methodology, I'll admit this is a different plant. It's a combined cycle plant, not a combined heat and power gas plant. But still, the difference is pretty dramatic. It would be $24 per megawatt hour cheaper to have a clean energy portfolio thanks to IRA incentives. And right now, the reason that NPW is looking at a combined heat and power plant is that, it allows you to generate the steam and use that steam for other purposes. And for NPW, they have a very lucrative steam contract with GPC. But this clean energy portfolio is so much cheaper, it would actually cover the cost of the steam contract by the numbers we have. So that was something that we kind of brought up in 2020, saying, it doesn't, in our mind, it didn't make sense to make the entire community pay for a gas plant that is scoped to fit the needs of a large industrial customer, mainly, and then pass that cost on to the whole community. And now with I think the cost difference, I think that argument is more solid, but ultimately this is MPW's decision. And the numbers that we ran here that I'm sharing at the bottom did not include having a demand response or efficiency program with the utility. So hopefully that all made sense. If not, the main message is that the Inflation Reduction Act really changes the game on what NPW is deciding. So.
Great, thank you, Katie. Appreciate it. I see we have a couple questions here in the chat that we can address here. Mark asked what the legal ways to dispose of coal ash, basically an aligned coal ash dump with a synthetic liner is the most up-to-date way to do that. Steve, the Inflation Reduction Act, I think we've hit on that a little bit, but basically it's the new federal funding that's coming down that's making renewables much more affordable. Since discussing that information, how do people feel about MPW looking at different paths besides natural gas? Are these the factors that we shared, are these motivating factors? How about this? Was anybody surprised by the information we shared? I can tell you, I was shocked to learn that natural gas is so young. It's a very young industry, and I don't think we realize that because it has been around, just not at the level that we're working with today. Okay, so steps towards resiliency and energy independence. We want to talk about a few things: energy planning, energy efficiency, microgrids, and battery storage. So energy planning, this is something that we really hope the community does. As a community-owned utility, we hope that MPW works to incorporate folks from around the community to talk about energy planning, to work together to identify, who is using what energy and how folks might be able to work together, specifically like around microgrids and things like that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But this model here is from the U.S. Department of Energy, and this is how they suggest that communities go about energy strategic planning. And our hope is, or my hope is, I hope that the Muscatine County Energy District does look into this. They would be a great leader in energy planning in Muscatine County. So energy efficiency for individuals. We did just want to mention here the Energy District. So thanks, Sue, for telling us about the Energy District. This is a new opportunity in Muscatine County, and an energy district is really a model that was started here in Iowa, up in Winneshiek County in Decorah, and it has been replicated in over a dozen counties now, and Muscatine is on the way to creating their own 501c3 and having its own energy district. Primarily, what an energy district does is work on efficiency issues with local homeowners and small businesses. These are efficiency measures that individuals can take. That's generally what the energy district does, and small business as well. Later in the presentation, we're going to go into the finances of some new energy efficiency money that individuals can receive. Now, this is a big one. Industrial energy efficiency. Muscatine is unique in its industrial energy needs. We have a lot of industry. And what we found was pretty shocking. We were looking for a way to, or we were looking for things to suggest that industry does to reduce their energy needs. And we found it. We first started by looking at the Energy Storage Action Plan from the Iowa Economic Development Authority. And we didn't find everything we wanted there, so we went to their source materials and we found some great information. The source material that was really helpful was energy management through peak shaving and demand response, new opportunities for energy savings at manufacturing and distribution technologies. So what we did, we took a model that was in that document and put in industrial customer numbers. And what we came up with in this model is a savings of between 20 and 40% for these industrial customers. And over a 15-year period, that means that at 20%, one industrial customer might save over $65 million. And at 40%, we're looking at over $130 million in savings on their energy bill over 15 years. We were pretty excited to share this information. We think MPW is excited to hear it as well. The following meeting, Gage spoke about how Bayer, formerly Monsanto, had contacted them to talk about efficiency and sustainability issues. And then the following month, Gage announced that Bayer Global had come to town to talk about energy efficiency and sustainability measures as well. So we hope this information is helpful to industry, and we hope to keep sharing this information to as many industrial businesses as we can. So next, we're talking about battery capacity. Basically, this chart here is the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and what it's showing is just that solar and battery storage there on the right, the yellow and blue, that solar is the most used energy source with battery storage and has been for the past few years. Now, there's something pretty exciting on the battery forefront here, and these are iron air batteries. These are multiple day storage, up to 100 hours, so 4-day storage. And the critical thing here is there's no lithium or precious metals. This is iron, and this technology is new. It's being created by a former exec from Tesla. They started a new company called Form Energy, and they've been working on this. And they were expected to see a pilot of this in 2 to 3 years. So we hope that MPW keeps their eye on this, because this changes the whole game. It goes from like 4-hour storage to 4-day storage, and that's a game changer. And if we're expecting that to be ready in just a few years, hopefully that's taken into consideration in long-term planning. So microgrids, we haven't talked a lot about microgrids in Muscatine. We, at the board meetings, they talk about renewables and the larger renewable plans. They have to go through MISO, which is basically the interconnecting folks in our region to ensure that everybody has enough energy. That's where energy is sold and bought from. So there really hasn't been a lot of talk about microgrids because we're looking at the bigger picture. But we think microgrids are a pretty important part of the big picture. And so we brought somebody in who knows a lot about microgrids, and that's Terry Dvorak from Red Line Renewables. Terry, you there?
I'm here.
All right, well, we have a little bit of information up here about what you've done, but can you give us an overview of your projects with schools, local government, and churches?
Sure. I mean, we always tried to, we got started because a lot of customers wanted to figure out how they could integrate renewables and do it fiscally responsible. And up until the IRA, tax benefits were out there, but they weren't out there for schools and cities and churches. So we found ways to do that, and we have been for 8 years or so now. And like you've got listed on your slides, over 100 different facilities throughout the state, which adds up. It's usually just they're coming to us because they want to make a difference, and they don't have the capital, and we do, and we make it work. Doesn't always work everywhere, but when it does, it works really well. Timelines you've got down there, yeah, supply chains have been messing things up throughout, and some projects can be done in a couple of months, and some are gonna be waiting on parts and pieces that may be 6 months out. That seems to be a roll of dice every week these days, and that's pretty much every construction industry right now. So not just electronics. Some of the game changers that kind of were mentioned, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, is a big one, because now the utility and schools and cities, if they've got their own capital, can get reimbursed for what a taxable entity could have gotten. At least some of it. Some of the rules are still not written, so there's still some uncertainty there, but at least 26% is supposed to be available for, I guess you'd call it a rebate. Or reimbursement after the fact, but you don't get some of the other ones. So we still have customers coming to us, even though the IRA is there, because they don't want to take on the risk. They don't want to, trust somebody to say it's going to produce something and then it doesn't. And they don't want to manage it. They don't want to deal with warranties. They don't want to deal with maintenance issues, and that risk. And until, they'll hold out for 5-6 years once all the tax code is done, and then, they know what they're buying into. So we still plan on helping as many cities and schools, and as long as we can help them save money and make an impact across Iowa, I'm happy to help here too.
Great, thanks. Can you also go into how the size of your microgrids differ from a larger installation like MPW is planning, like in terms of how quickly it can be done and the steps to do that?
Sure. I mean, one of it, we size it to our customers' usage. We're not trying to make a city or a school or anything into a new utility. That's not our goal. Is to reduce their carbon footprint and their costs. But one of the things that, when you're doing Solar One, which I think is like 24 megawatts or something, when you get over 5 megawatts, MISO comes into play because it takes more planning, it takes an impact on the overall distribution grid. And that adds, 1, 2, 3 years sometimes into the horizon before anything gets installed. With the small systems, I mean, the impact is relatively small on an individual basis, where, we can turn stuff around and, in an ideal world within 90 days, 30 days to get through the permitting in the beginning, 30 days to build, 30 days to get through the approvals at the end. But realistic, 6-month time frame is common, for a distributed generation project, whereas, 2-3 years is common for a large utility scale project.
Great, thanks, Terry. So Terry's kind of the expert on these microgrids. Does anybody else have questions for Terry about this? All right. Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome.
So next we have Christine Moat. She's going to talk about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. And this information is coming from the Iowa Environmental Council's funding hub. You can find this on their website, the Iowa Environmental Council. So Christine, take it away.
Hello, and thank you all for being with us tonight. I'm on the board of Progress Muscatine. So I saw earlier in the chat, somebody asked, what is the IRA? So I'm going to go a little more in depth with that. So you can go to the next slide. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, was signed into law in November 2021, and it will invest $1.2 trillion into community infrastructure projects over the next decade. The Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, which we've heard a lot this evening, was signed into law in August 2022, and the IRA is the largest climate investment in US history, supporting $370 billion in programs that benefit households, businesses, and communities. And the implementation of IRA programs would put the country on the path of reducing emissions 40% by 2030. So how can the IRA and the IIJA help Muscatine County? I am going to talk about individuals, businesses, nonprofits, and governments, and some of the tax credits and programs that are applicable. So, individuals, consumers can lower their energy costs with programs geared toward home energy efficiency upgrades, home electrification, clean energy installation, and electric transportation. So, 2 tax credits for individuals in terms of renewable energy and energy efficiency are the residential solar, wind, geothermal, and battery storage investment tax credit, as well as the energy efficient home improvement tax credit. And like Jessica said, you can find more information on their website, which I have a link to later on in the slides, because this is a lot of information and there's more in-depth information about the timeline of these tax credits and things. There are also 2 rebates, and I know that someone mentioned one of them earlier. The home energy performance-based whole house rebate and the high efficiency electric home rebate. And these provide rebates to homeowners for whole house energy saving retrofits. There are 2 tax credits for electric vehicles, the clean vehicle credit and the used clean vehicle credit. And both of these help consumers save money when switching to qualified clean vehicles. So how much money will you get with the Inflation Reduction Act? RewiringAmerica.org has a Rewiring America IRA calculator. So you can go to the calculator and enter your household information to find out how these things can specifically apply to you. It's a great resource. Businesses. The Inflation Reduction Act expands opportunities for Iowa businesses to take advantage of cost-saving tax credits to generate and store clean energy, electrify fleet vehicles, and to reduce energy waste. So both of these renewable energy tax credits, these apply before 2025. So the investment tax credit for renewable generation and the production tax credit for renewable generation. The investment tax credit is a 30% investment tax credit for solar, small wind, geothermal, fuel cell, microturbine, combined heat and power, waste energy recovery, energy storage technology, and biogas constructed before January 1st, 2025. And then there are 2 tax credits that apply to 2025 and after. So we have the emissions-based investment tax credit and the emissions-based production tax credit. There are also some things for energy efficiency. So there's the energy efficient commercial building deduction and the new energy efficient home credit. This is a lot of information. So these slides are available and there will be a link to find more information about more specifics. I know someone earlier mentioned electric vehicles, and there is a commercial clean vehicle credit as well that businesses can use. So the next, nonprofits. The IRA expands opportunities for nonprofits, churches, rural electric cooperatives, and other tax-exempt entities to take advantage of cost-saving tax credits to generate and store clean energy, receive financial assistance, and to receive grants. The first is the Environmental and Climate Justice Block Grant. This is a three-year grant, and they're available for projects related to climate change and air pollution, including air pollution monitoring, extreme heat risk mitigation, resiliency and adaptation, indoor pollution reduction, and community engagement. There's also USDA assistance for rural electric cooperatives.
I just want to hop in here real quick. This Environmental and Climate Justice Block Grant is definitely something that Muscatine could look into. Generally, these grants, they like to bring numerous entities together. So if numerous entities in Muscatine got together, this is a grant that Muscatine could likely receive. There is a short timeline on this. I believe it's April is the timeline. So anyway, sorry, Christine, back to you.
We can go to the next slide. So these tax credits, they're the same that I went over for the businesses, but they also can apply for nonprofits. So again, the investment tax credit for renewable generation and production tax credit for renewable generation. And these are both before 2025. And the same thing as businesses, the emissions-based investment tax credit and the emissions-based production tax credit for 2025 and after. And finally, governments. The IRA expands opportunities for government entities, including state agencies, universities, public schools, and local government to take advantage of cost-saving tax credits to generate and store clean energy. The IIJA will also provide grant funding to target specific priorities at the local level. So again, there are the environmental and climate justice block grants that we just went over, the neighborhood access and equity grants. These grants improve transportation access and mitigate negative safety or environmental impacts in underserved communities for improvements to reduce air pollution and GHG emissions, manage stormwater runoff, address urban heat islands, and to monitor air quality, etc. And then there are a few more grants. There
Can I add
is,
one thing here, Christine?
yeah.
The government grant, there is a government to government grant, and then there is a government to nonprofit grant. So there are two different streams of funding. So the government to government grant is something that the city could look into, while the government to like nonprofit is a different funding stream. So anyway, moving on.
Thank you for clarifying. So grants for energy efficiency contractor training, and then there's also the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So there's also a renewable energy investment tax credit for renewable generation and the production tax credit for renewable generation. We've went over these in the last few. And the same with the emissions-based investment tax credit and the emissions-based production tax credit 2025 and after. So, like I said before, for more information, you can go to the Iowa Energy and Infrastructure Funding Hub, and it tells a lot about the dates of these applications and things like that. And some of the programs are available immediately, while additional programs, tax credits, and rebates will be available next year. And I should also mention that there are bonus credits for investment tax credits and production tax credits. And you'll just have to see additional details for criteria. So all of that information is available on that website. So Justice 40 is an initiative that seeks to deliver at least 40% of the overall benefits from federal investments in climate and clean energy to disadvantaged communities, and 72 EPA programs are covered. A covered program is a federal government program that makes covered investment benefits in one or more of the following 7 areas: climate change, clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transportation, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, and critical clean water and waste infrastructure. So there is the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, and it's an interactive map with indicators to assist agencies in defining and identifying disadvantaged communities. So you can go to this and input your zip code and see if your community is a disadvantaged community. So on this next slide, you will see a screenshot from the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool of Muscatine. On this map, you can see of the whole US, the gray areas are disadvantaged communities. So the highlighted one there with the dark blue, that is in the 95th percentile of legacy pollution with a proximity to risk management plan facilities. And the other 2 gray areas at the top there, They are in the 98th percentile of lead paint. So there is a high likelihood of having lead paint exposure in the homes in that area. So you can go to that tool and check out more of the specifics. And once you get that information, you can go to the Equitable and Just National Climate Platform Funding Finder, which is on the next slide. And at that website, you can input what kind of funding you're interested in or what you could potentially qualify for. And it has all of the information to help get the ball rolling for that.
All right, well, that is all we have for our presentation tonight. We'd like to open it up for questions. Looks like we have some things in the chat here. Does anybody have a question right off the bat?
I had a quick question. Where do you find that interactive map?
Christine?
Yeah, so that is the screeningtool.geoplatform.gov. Jessica, will we send out an email with some of these links?
Yes, everybody that attends, by the end of the week, we'll send out the presentation and a fact sheet and a list of the links here. Any other questions tonight?
It is interesting to note on the IRA, it's so new that some of the rules haven't been written, especially with the bonus tax credits. That 30% tax rate you talked about, that does require a prevailing wage and apprenticeship program on the labor, just so that you know. And then USDA's got some other programs out there that are out there for taxable entities. So small businesses in rural areas, which you guys would qualify, but not for like the school district or the municipality directly.
Great, thanks, Terry. Any other questions or comments tonight? Yeah, Gage.
Hey Jessica, this is Gage Houston from MPW. Yeah, and I appreciate the invite to join this evening, and certainly some good information shared here. I just want to remind the folks listening, MPW is we're a municipal utility in Muscatine, so we're nonprofit. There was mention of something about a lucrative steam contract, but we're nonprofit. Our motivation, our entire goal is to serve the Muscatine community the best way we can. As we look at our power supply transition, we've continually focused on this balanced approach, of reliability, affordability, flexibility, and sustainability. So we really have put a lot more focus on the sustainability part of our portfolio. And I could tell you that, as the staff and the board, it is something we take very seriously. But balancing those other factors, and in particularly reliability, is very paramount to our approach to how we provide power in Muscatine. And I know, just as an example, some of those clean energy portfolios that the Sierra Club had looked at in the past and shared would not, in our assessment, provide a reliable portfolio for Muscatine. And so, it's really about looking at the whole picture of the portfolio, and not just on maybe a solar wind contract PPA basis, looking at what it would take overall to continue to serve the community in a reliable and affordable way. And so that's the kind of information we've been sharing with our board, and we'll continue to do so as we look at options. But again, looking at it with that overall approach of doing what's best for Muscatine. There are no other motives involved. That's what we're after. So,
Hey Gage, have you guys taken note of what's what some of your peers are doing, Cedar Falls and Ames, and then the plant at Iowa City at the university.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Yeah, we interact and track their activities as well. I know Ames, the city council has adopted some very aggressive targets for Ames, and I can tell you, speaking with some of the staff there, they don't have necessarily clear plans or direction on exactly how to achieve some of those things. So I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. So while it's good to have those ambitious goals, getting there and ensuring that the system remains reliable as you do that, I think there are still a lot of question marks on some of that stuff.
Have you talked to University of Iowa? Because I know they've been transitioning their coal plant to woody materials, either pellets or switchgrass.
Yep. We've talked with them quite a few times over the years. They burn some miscanthus grass that's grown south of Iowa City. They also, I believe, at one time, I don't know if they still do, burn some kind of biomass. It's recycled, a kind of primarily paper type material that gets pelletized. And when we've looked at it in the past, the cost on kind of a per unit basis for that fuel is about 4 to 5 times what our costs were. So it wasn't a cost-effective solution when we looked at it in the past. And there are a lot of other issues logistically. And when you talk about the volume of fuel, I think they've blended it over time. But to get the volume to fully replace or a significant blend, there's a lot of questions on the logistics of that as well.
Are you seeing a lot of the cost change significantly in the other? I mean, I always focus on solar and seen them go down and then coming back up. Have you seen them change in the other technologies over the last 2 years? I know you and I looked at solar, gosh, what, 5-6 years ago maybe, and it was what it is today is nowhere near what, it was a hell of a lot more expensive back then. So,
I'll say the cost for solar, and this, Terry, too, really went up in 2022. We've talked a little bit about that Muscatine Solar 1 project, our 24 megawatt project, and we've shared with our board that the cost for that contract went up significantly from the time we initially went out for bid to where we ended up with that contract. And so we're anxious, like all of you, to see what the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act will ultimately be. I can tell you that, this project, the developer is planning to pursue those IRA incentives, and we're still seeing costs that are pretty high for that contract. So where that will trend, we just looked at some recent data earlier today that maybe we're starting to see a little bit of a leveling out of solar PPA prices that had been trending up significantly. So maybe we'll start to see that bend back down in the coming year.
Great, thank you, Gage. Thank you, Terry. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Jessica, sorry, I wanted to go back to one of the first ones, the non-attainment issue for SO2. And I think too, that, it was an old designation. The upgrades that were associated with that original non-attainment plan have been put into place. The SO2 emissions have dropped dramatically from when that designation was put in place. And so it's really kind of an administrative formality now to get it taken out of non-attainment. The results are already there. They've been in place for several years, so that the air quality and emissions, the air quality is improved and the emissions have gone down. All that stuff is done. So I just want to reinforce to folks that's kind of an old designation, really kind of a formality to get that off, because the air quality has improved significantly.
Thanks, Gage. One thing I guess I would like to say to that, though, Gage, is that in the past, Muscatine has been non-attainment, and the decisions by the industry led to being in non-attainment again. So we just hope that commitment is there, from everyone in town who would contribute to that, because it's not just MPNW that contributes.
Yeah, and in my workings with other industry, I think the commitment's certainly there. Yeah, MPW had a really, really minor impact on those ambient air quality numbers, but yeah, I think the commitment's certainly there.
Great. Any other comments tonight? Questions?
Hey Gage, this is Steve Paulsard. I had a question, and I know this is probably kind of unpopular with the public and the dangers related to nuclear. But they've talked about the smaller scale plants that are standardized. Do you see that as in 20 years making more of an impact in the States?
I do think if we really want to get to a truly carbon neutral or carbon free electric supply, that nuclear will likely have to play a role in that. And that there's interest in, in several utilities throughout the country and throughout the world at getting those small modular designs approved and commercial and up and running for that reason. We are not currently studying small modular nuclear for Muscatine. I think that would be a tough path forward for us in particular, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that in other parts of the country for sure in the coming years.
And I guess the only reason I bring it up is because, obviously renewable energy, solar and wind, are not 100% reliable, and we're going to need something besides those, unless batteries somehow become, less damaging to the environment to even make them, or some new technology.
Yeah,
no, exactly right. And I think, when the city of Des Moines was looking at a kind of a carbon-free, wanting to go to a carbon-free supply, they'd asked Mid-American, and Mid-American had even proposed at that time kind of two options. One was an all renewable and storage, and one was a lot of renewables with some nuclear, and the nuclear option was significantly cheaper for that reason. And Jessica talked about the iron air battery storage, and I think advancements in technology, in particular in storage, it allows you to get longer term and even beyond multiple days, probably seasonal storage, I think are the things that are ultimately going to get us, over the hump. But I think there's just a lot of research and development needed to find those solutions.
Thanks, Gage. I was just going to point that out. Those iron air batteries are really a game changer. Any other comments or questions before we call it a night? Well, I want to thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. And I want to leave you with one thought, and that has to do with energy production in Iowa. At Muscatine Power and Water, currently about 5.5% of their energy is produced from renewables. And when they add their Solar One project, it's expected to take that number to 11 to 12%. And when we compare that to Iowa, Iowa is actually at 60%. So our hope is that we can help Muscatine Power and Water catch up to Iowa's renewable energy success story. And we hope that you all help us get there too. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and have a good evening. And look out for an email from us with the slides and some additional information. Thank you.